Stardew Valley is an incredible game with a dynamic, never-ending world which feels like a living, breathing place. And I wanted to explore what makes this game so special and why I and many of my friends who have very different tastes in games continually return when there's a new update, when I just need to get lost in a world I love for a little. When thinking on this, I found three main aspects of design that I believe are the heart of Stardew's genius: narrative/tone, progression/mechanics, and exploration/game world. These three aspects each represent a single thread of the game that tightly weave together in mindful ways to create Stardew Valley. In this video, I will go through each of them, explaining how they build off of one another. To start, I will explore the narrative and themes of the game, how Stardew promotes authentic connections with one's own interests and the community they are a part of. Then I will discuss how the progression and game mechanics guide players to their own styles of gameplay and expression, tying into the theme of connecting people to their authentic interests. And finally, I will discuss the excitement of exploring and learning about this game world that is so densely packed with secrets and areas to discover, which cements the sense this is a dynamic world rather than a flattened caricature of a small town. Each of these aspects is vital to the effects Stardew produces, and I can't wait to explore the vast web of interconnected systems and ideas that form the genius of Stardew. The first of the three I want to discuss is the narrative and themes Stardew champions through its dynamic characters and world. This is really the heart of the game. It sets the backdrop and tone of the world you are exploring, and with that backdrop understood, it will be easier to see how the progression system and exploration threads into the larger message of the game. At its core, the main theme of Stardew Valley is about embracing your authentic interests by connecting with your community and nature at large. You play as the farmer, whose grandfather has passed away and he left them a note to be opened on the day they feel crushed by the burden of modern life and their spirit will fade before a growing emptiness. That day finally comes when the farmer is working a 9-to-5 cubicle job for JojaMart in a gray, dingy area surrounded by other disillusioned characters and a literal fucking skeleton. They learn that inside the note is the deed to an old farm in Stardew Valley your grandfather used to live at. He hopes you will find real connections with other people and nature at this new home, and in essence, that's what this game is all about. The farmer is there to reignite their passion for living and evaluate what's truly important in their career and life in general. At this new home, the farmer finds career options, new places to explore, and loads of authentic characters to share this space with. This idea of connecting to the community and embracing one's passions is a theme that is omnipresent, from the freedom of gameplay to the narratives of other villagers. Abigail wants to be an adventurer, but lacks confidence, but she is able to find it through her relationship with the farmer. Leah wants to embrace her artistry, which felt stifled in the big city, and she finds her muse in the valley and relationship to the community. Clint is a little fucking freak who just wants to work up the courage to tell Emily how he feels, and open up to the community in general, which, sucks for him because she's my wife in this playthrough. Every story revolves around the unique attributes of the villagers, whilst always returning to the same ideas, that you need to do what you love while connecting with people you love. As for the literal mechanics of how friendship works, every character has a different relationship with the farmer, which you can track under the social tab. As you get closer with them, you can see their hearts begin to fill in, and after enough hearts are filled, you unlock different character cutscenes. These cutscenes show little snippets further into their personal lives, and as you get more hearts, the cutscenes reveal more and more about the character's internal conflict, or dreams, or personality. I think something interesting Stardew does is use the mechanics of gaining friends to communicate bits of characterization about the villagers. To gain hearts, you can do a variety of things. Every day you talk to a character, you get a few points towards friendship and learn a little more about the type of person they are. Penny is very reserved and sometimes doesn't know what to say, but is clearly very kind. Evelyn is a sweet old lady who worries about her husband George, who is a bitter old man in a wheelchair who struggles facing the fact his aging body is limiting his ability to express his autonomy. Another way to gain friendship is through mini-fetch quests. Occasionally characters will post ads asking for a certain item, and doing this gives more friendship, and also communicates a bit about them. Demetrius will post ads asking the player to fish for certain types of fish because there's an overpopulation of them threatening others, communicating his interest in environmental science. Overall though, the most consistent and interesting way to gain friendship is through gift giving. You can give a character a gift 2 times a week, and each character has different likes and dislikes in their gifts. This incentivizes the player to actually pay attention to different characters' traits and interests. For example, Emily gives big hippie girl psychedelic queen vibes, so it's not too surprising she enjoys various gemstones. She's also big into fashion and making her own clothes, so she enjoys cloth as well. Linus is another good example of this. He is proud of his lifestyle of abandoning standards of success placed upon him by society about wealth and traditional choices. Instead, he's happy to simply be in nature and forage for his food, living in a little tent. His plot revolves around the marginalization he faces for his alternative lifestyle, often facing well-intentioned people trying to, quote, fix him in a way that demeans his autonomy while he just wants to do his own thing.
Oh, it's Linus, right? Are you hungry? I can make you some lunch. How about some leftover cave carrot stew? That's very nice of you, but no thanks. I've had great luck with foraging today. Okay. Sam, you look like you have something to say. I'm just pleased that Linus is doing well. Thanks, Sam. You had me worried there. I thought you were going to ask me to move in on the farm with you. You know, I consider you my closest friend in the valley. You've never ever tried to fix me. You respect my way of life, even if you don't understand it. I really appreciate that. Ah, can you smell that? It's the sweet aroma of ripe berries.
His like gifts correspond with this narrative as well. He likes easily forageable items and simple foods, and he's the only character who dislikes the treasure chest item, clearly communicating his apprehension towards wealth. This also serves a gameplay and further narrative purpose. Early on, it may be difficult to acquire some of the other villagers' like gifts, like diamonds or coffee, and Linus is usually right on the path to the mines where an early player is likely to visit often and find a forageable on the way there, so it makes Linus an easy villager to befriend. He was certainly one of my closest friends in my initial playthrough. And also, with his like gifts being amongst the easiest to get, like you can literally pick up a horseradish right in front of him and give it to him, and he's all about that shit. It speaks volumes about the other villagers' treatment of Linus, leading to him being defensive and afraid of people. The cutscene from earlier clearly showed Robin's deep discomfort of him, and his early dialogue and cutscenes indicate the villagers have often mistreated him. He's marginalized within the community, and following his narrative shows little moments of people coming to accept him and support him. It is one of the many stories championing the importance of embracing your interests and connecting with the community at large. Even the very basic mechanics of the friendship system are used in narratively interesting ways. All the villagers have set schedules, which, similar to their like gifts, also teaches you a little bit about them. A good example of this being used for characterization is Abigail. Many days you'll find her in her room playing Journey of the Prairie King, showing her interest in games, which aligns well with her adventurous spirit, wanting to explore new areas, which at the moment has to be satiated through escapism. Other days you'll find her by the mountains, playing the flute, showing a musical/creative interest, and sometimes you'll find her in the graveyard, looking at Mona's grave, which introduces a mystery to the game as to who Mona is and the nature of their relationship with Abigail. Apparently there's no concrete answer to this question, there's just a few different fan theories, and I appreciate that decision. I feel it adds some depth to the game. Just as in the real world, we don't know everything about the losses or loves people in our community have faced, we don't know those things for every villager either. It's also nice just to see little things, like a lot of the ladies in the neighborhood get together to do aerobics once a week, or you see the younger villagers hanging out shooting pool at the saloon on Fridays. You can tell who is friends with whom by where people go or where they stand at during holidays and festivals. There's a lot of narrative communicated simply in the location these characters inhabit, which I find really cool. While most of the characters' total hearts cap out at 10, all of the eligible bachelor/bachelorette/dateable non-binary goblin creatures like Krobus and, me, only go up to 8 hearts. But when you reach that threshold, you can then choose to start dating them, opening it up to 10 hearts, and after 10 hearts, you can get married to them, which has them come live on your farm and opens them up to 14 hearts, and all of the dateable villagers have more cutscenes than any of the non-dateable villagers. Having different marriage candidates is nice. It creates a lot of replayability, and it's kind of fun seeing how your choice in partner changes as you change and get older. I mean, when you replay the game, you're probably going to want to see new cutscenes anyway, so it makes sense to choose someone new, but even who my favorite marriage candidate is in general has changed across playthroughs as I have changed as a person. I first got this game when I was 16 or 17, and my marriage partner was Leah. When I was 19 or 20 replaying the game, I realized Abigail was a more fitting choice for me, and now that I'm 23, I feel like Emily would be the best fit for me. Outside of Krobus, of course. Most importantly though, I think the main thing that really sells Stardew Valley's narrative themes is how they aren't afraid to explore heavy ideas in a positive setting. The central themes and presentation of the game is very cutesy and sweet. You get one of the best, most uplifting soundtracks in gaming over cute pixelated characters who have their own little quirks and habits. You have all these festivals where everyone comes together to dance or watch jellyfish. There's cute forest sprites who help you fix up the town and are the guardians of nature. The whole game is about building connection with community, nature, and your passions. But beneath the surface, there's a lot more going on than just positive ideas. There are some very real and heavy moments that help the cute tone feel earned, adding some texture to the whole game world and really sells the power of these positive ideals. Something that is difficult to maintain in these cozy games is a positive tone that isn't overly saccharine. I talked about this in depth in my previous video on a short hike, which y'all should definitely watch, just in general, it's a good video, but I'll talk about this effect here as well. You might expect every character in this game to be very happy-go-lucky, like in newer Animal Crossing games. In New Horizons, all the villagers want to be your friend right away. They generally have a central character trait like being into sports or being artsy, and it's all really chill, but what limits my ability to form a connection to the Animal Crossing villagers is the fact they are all too sweet. There's no contrast to show how far your relationship has come, or any inward conflict the characters need to overcome to help feel like they have developed and deepened a bond with you. Without this, the villagers would just be empty caricatures of generic personality traits, like being a sports fan or an artist or an outdoorsy hippo or something. Now, I do like the Animal Crossing villagers, they're pretty goofy and serve their purpose very well, and the game in general puts less emphasis on character relationships, but I think the heights Stardew Valley reaches with its narrative add that extra bit of motivation to enjoy the game world. Stardew does a very good job injecting serious themes that humanize the characters, whilst never succumbing to cynicism or introducing anything that would challenge the positive tone too much. Rather, it creates a sense of genuine positivity. The characters earn your love through their authentic representation of problems you would see in an actual small community. I think a great example of this effect is the character Shane, who seems to be rather polarizing among Stardew players. When the farmer first meets Shane, he basically tells you to fuck off because he'd rather be drinking. It's very direct characterization. This is an unfriendly, mean person who is lost deeply in his bad habits. His schedule for most of the game basically consists of him going to work at his depressing Jojo Mart job, then going to the saloon to drink all night, or on his day off, he sits around the house all day and then gets to the saloon as soon as it opens to drink all afternoon and night. His presentation and manner begins very off-putting, but as you learn more about who he is and his role in the community, you begin to see under his angry facade revealing a kind heart that is breaking under the weight of the perceived purposelessness of his own life. Shane has only been in the valley for a few months, living with his Aunt Marnie and his goddaughter Jas, and something I find interesting/appreciate is that it's never explicitly mentioned how he came to be Jas's guardian, only that he was friends with her parents. And let's be real, I'm not leaving my 7-year-old in this fucker's incapable hands, so there has to be some story there, but like Abigail with Mona's grave, leaving it unanswered adds to the depth and texture of the game world. As for his physical presentation, in his little portrait, you see his jacket has numerous holes in it, he has a 5 o'clock shadow going and disheveled hair, he doesn't look like he's doing too hot, you know? But as you get closer to him, you begin to understand his mentality as he gradually warms up to you.
Up late, huh? Here, have a cold one. Buh, life. You ever feel like no matter what you do, you're gonna fail? Like you're stuck in some miserable abyss and you're so deep you can't even see the light of day? I just feel like no matter how hard I try, I'm not strong enough to climb out of that hole. Fast drinker, huh? Woman after my own heart. Just don't make it a habit. You got a future ahead of you still. Well, my liver's begging me to stop. Better call it a night. See you around, PT Slammer.
I think the line that really jumps out to me as central to his character here is when he sees you can drink fast, he warns, "Don't make a habit of it, you've still got a future," implying that he, someone who does have a habit of drinking and shows no resolve to stop, has no future himself. The tragedy of Shane is not that he is a mean person who wants you to fuck off, it's that he's an incredibly kind and sensitive person who has internalized the self-perception of, "I am a worthless human," so deeply he needs to prove it any chance he gets, whether it be through drinking, pushing away potential new friends, or harming himself in such a bad way even his goddaughter sees, which reinforces the idea he is worthless, so he returns again to those same destructive habits. The cycle is further established in his next cutscene.
Oh dear. PT Slammer, can you do something? He's out cold. Buh. Shane, what's the matter with you? All you do anymore is mope around your room and drink beer. You wouldn't understand. What's your plan? Don't you ever think about the future? Hopefully I won't be around long enough to need a plan. Jazz. I'm sorry.
Marnie's chastisement of Shane here is interesting. She sees his behavior as being within his realm of autonomy, so her reaction is to be frustrated with him. Now obviously this frustration comes from a place of love and care. I am sure she and Jazz have faced the worst of Shane more than anyone in the community, and it is difficult for her to watch her nephew fall into horrible habits, and she can only imagine that his disregard for himself and everyone around them to be characteristic of a deep apathy and nihilism. He must never think about his future if he cares this little for his own life. But we know that it isn't apathy that afflicts him. Rather, the future is always on his mind, and it terrifies him. Because he believes his essential character quality is being worthless, he cannot imagine a world in which he is not worthless. So when he thinks to the future, how many more years of suffering he will have to endure this curse for, it is overwhelmingly painful, and it plays into his cycle of self-deprecation. Whenever he hurts himself, or worst of all, hurts Jazz like he does here, it is further proof that he is a bad, worthless person, so he should destroy himself more. But it is the self-destruction itself which made this moment occur, so it's this horrific feedback loop of hurting himself because he is worthless, seeing how it hurts his family, proving that he is worthless, so he should further hurt himself because that is what a worthless person deserves. This peaks in his next cutscene, where you see him lying on the ground, drunk at the edge of a cliff, contemplating suicide.
PT Slammer? I'm sorry. My life. It's a pathetic joke. Look at me. Why do I even try? I'm too small and stupid to take control of my life. I'm just a piece of soiled garbage flittering in the wind. I've been coming here often lately, looking down. Here's a chance to finally take control of my life. These cliffs. But I'm too scared, too anxious, just like always. PT Slammer, all I do is work, sleep, and drink to dull the feelings of self-hatred. Why should I even go on? Tell me why I shouldn't roll off this cliff right now. Maybe for you, but not for me. You're not going to understand. Just go away. Ugh. Wait. PT Slammer. I think you should take me to the hospital now.
This is a breaking point for him. At his lowest, he can't cynically distance himself from the pain of his perceived reality, and the substance he uses to numb himself from these thoughts in this moment is fueling a horrified confession, and the farmer is the only one there to console him. After this, you take him to the hospital, where Harvey tells you he will talk with Shane about therapy, and I really like this touch. As far as I know, Harvey and Shane barely interact, and yes, it is Harvey's job as a doctor to support his patients, but I like how it ties into the game's themes here. The game talks a lot about how connecting to the community is a positive thing that can help you to better yourself and achieve your goals. And here, Harvey, someone with very little personal connection to Shane, but a deep connection to the community at large, is taking the first step and guiding him towards self-help. The next morning, Shane comes over to thank you for your support.
Oh man, how do I say this? I'm really sorry about what happened at the cliffs. That was embarrassing. I'm just happy you're still here. Wow, it was that serious, huh? I can hardly remember. I've decided I want to see a therapist. Harvey got me in touch with a colleague of his. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for taking care of me, and I want you to know that I'm going to take things a little more seriously from now on. I don't want to be a burden on anyone.
A little while after this scene, you see how the support from you and his family and the community and the therapy he is receiving help him to change some major parts of his life, and we see him embrace intimacy in a way the old Shane would have been terrified of. He talks about how he realizes he does have friends and people that care about him, Your connection with him and the community at large are what end up saving him from that cycle. It gives him the clarity to see he doesn't deserve the pain he inflicts on himself, and he can see how his actions have affected his loved ones, and instead of curling in on himself and repeating the cycle of self-destruction, he does something that is much harder and braver. He shows grace to himself, and truly works to love himself more to change his behavior. You see this in action in the next scene, where he is trying to make a commercial for JojaMart to get 10,000 gold. He does so by working with Emily, Clint, and the farmer. He's reaching out to other members of the community to explore his interests, and use his time in creative, productive ways. He went from someone who hated himself and viewed needing others as weak and rejected the community to someone who is actively engaged with his neighbors and loved ones, pursuing his own goals. I love this scene in particular because you also see hints of Clint's story with his awkwardness around Emily, and by the end he breaks out of his shell and kills it in a public speaking role which he is terrified of. I've just gotta try new Joja Blue Cola. It's got 3 times the sorbitol for a thick, sweet blast, and it's cheaper than water. But isn't soda unhealthy? You promised me. Have no fear, my dear. The world-class science team at Joja headquarters have determined that Joja Blue does not cause a significant erosion of the stomach lining. So you can drink it whenever you like, as much as you like. The real question is, when will you turn blue? You can see how Shane getting better and engaging with the community created space for Clint to face his insecurities and overcome them, even if it is just for a brief moment. It ties into the theme of community and authenticity. This once again shows how it is through communal support that Shane can break out of this cycle, because if he has a place in the community where people value him, then he can't be worthless. At his 8 Heart event, Shane further embraces a new hobby with the blue chickens he's made, finding connection with these animals. It's also used as a connection to Jazz, who he plans on raising the chickens with. It's his connections to loved ones, community, and authentic interests which save his life. He sums it up best when he says, "You know, Charlie, I was thinking. A guy like me is always teetering on the edge of despair, know what I mean? But you and the other hens are going to keep me upright from now on. I know it." It's a similar reason to why I got my cat Alberta. I was really depressed and needed a friend, and she provided me companionship, but also put responsibility on me to help another living creature, meaning I had to take care of myself enough so that I could take care of her. For clarification, I'm talking about my actual real-life cat Alberta, not my in-game Stardew cat, who also is named Alberta. Anyways, Shane's narrative alone neatly threads together all of these themes in a single heartwarming story, and this is just one of the over 30 different characters who all have their own unique ways of engaging with these themes. You can see how the story teeters on the line between wholesome and heavy to downright depressing. It touches on themes of self-worth, depression, addiction, and suicide, while still maintaining a positive message that ties back into the theme of finding oneself and their purpose in a tight-knit community. These are all very real issues faced in small towns where everyone knows what's going on in everyone else's lives, be it through direct discussion or gossip. And Stardew encourages us to be understanding with one another and showcases how communities are stronger when we stand together. Like us for Shane, and like the opportunity Shane's commercial gave Clint to open up more, and the monetary gain Pierre and the farmer get through the new blue chickens, and the happiness Jazz got from her new pair of shoes. And this uplifting message feels earned, because they didn't shy away from showcasing the pain Shane was in. The game reaches for those very real places so we can build a real connection with this character and feel invested in how he changes and take pride in knowing that you being a part of the valley is making it a better place. Shane isn't an isolated case either. Pam and Penny's storyline goes over how Pam's drinking habit and unemployment have led to abusive behavior, and as the farmer gets closer with the characters, they unravel this plot more and have opportunities to support both Penny and Pam. As the game progresses and the farmer revitalizes the town, they fix up the bus stop, allowing Pam to get her job back, and by the endgame, you can buy them a new house to replace their little trailer. I think this is also a good place to mention how Penny's like gifts also tell a story, more specifically her disliked gifts. Any type of alcohol is extremely disliked by Penny as a gift. Even hops and grapes are extremely disliked. It's a small detail, but it speaks to the relationship Pam and Penny have with alcohol and one another. Now, not every story is super heavy or moving. I married Emily this time, and her cutscenes consist of her having a psychedelic dream about you, helping a hurt bird, showing off an awesome dance that I've heard some people talk shit on, but fuck you for disrespecting my wife, she's awesome. And in her final platonic cutscene, she is helping the town to embrace their own personal sense of style. Again, connecting to the themes of communal engagement and authenticity. Also, Clint's being a little fucking freak in this scene again. I couldn't do it. I don't want to break out of my shell. Oh, I guess I'm interrupting something here, aren't I? I understand. I'll leave now. Congrats, PT Slammer. Makes sense to have lighter stories like this as well. It would be kind of weird if there wasn't an array of different experiences, some heavy and some light, but they all blend together to create a very real sense of connection with these fictional characters who are all tied by the themes of community and authentic passions. These are just a few of the loads of little moments across all the characters, and I always find myself excited when I walk into a zone and a cutscene begins, not knowing what new bit of lore I'm about to learn about Marnie or what have you. It was the part that excited me most in my initial playthrough whilst learning the basics of the game. I feel like the efforts the game puts into this message of coming together with everybody, being yourself, really do ultimately pay off and makes the world feel that much more alive. The final bit I want to touch on in the narrative/theme section is how Stardew is good at showing hints towards a larger world outside of the valley in a few of the cutscenes and interactions, adding to the sense this isn't just a game, it's a complex place full of history and secrets. The first one that comes to mind is the scene with Sam and Vincent on the beach in Year 1.
Hello, Alberta. Nice day, isn't it? I'm just keeping an eye on my little brother. It's good for him to get some fresh air on a day like this. Our dad used to take us to the beach on sunny days like this. Sam? Is Dad ever going to come home? Of course, Vince. Dad's going to come back as soon as he possibly can. But I heard some grown-ups saying that all of our troops are getting shot to pieces. Don't believe everything you hear. Don't you remember how strong Dad is? He never let a pathetic Gotaro grunt get him like that. Don't you worry. And always remember that Mom and I are here to play with you if you ever feel lonely. Okay. To be honest, I have no idea if my old man will ever come back. We've all read the reports. Our soldiers are falling by the thousands. But what am I going to say to Vincent? You did the right thing. Kids should have hope. Yeah, kids should play and have fun while they still have the chance. Hey, did I tell you the band's starting to come together? Yeah, it turns out Abigail's a pretty good drummer, and Sebastian seemed to really want her in the band.
It's very interesting and kinda uncanny learning there's a violent conflict going on somewhere in the Stardew Valley universe. Stardew is located in the Ferngill Republic, which is at war with the Gotaro Empire. There is a world map in the game that's unlabeled, and a lot of the fans have made recreations of the map, but all of them seem to label the locations differently. The one thing that does seem to be consistent is that Ferngill and Gotaro are close to one another, separated by the Gem Sea, with Ferngill being to the north and Gotaro always being to the south. The game has touched on heavy themes, as I have discussed, but this also raises geopolitics and so many questions about what the war is being fought over, how it started, and how long has it been going on for, and what kind of threat does it pose to the valley. Once again, these questions are mainly left to mystery. There are a few references in character interactions where Sam mentions his dad talking about the Gotaro Empire as being pretty brutal, but there's also a book in the library titled Is the War with Gotaro Really Necessary? A Unique Perspective. It's interesting seeing how this raises questions of perspective in general. After Year 1 is finished, Sam and Vincent's father Kent returns to the valley, and his perspective is the only real one we get about the conflict. Kent has been actively involved in the fighting, so he clearly might have a bias about what Gotaro stands for. The player never learns anything from the other side. It's barely talked about at all really, so how can I reliably know if Kent's view is really justifiable? I may not be able to know that, but what I can reliably know is how the conflict is affecting people and their families. Kent doesn't get too many specific cutscenes, but the one we do get has to do with PTSD and fitting into a peaceful life with his family, a family that doesn't entirely recognize the man he is anymore, just as he doesn't quite recognize himself. Again, while the game never gets overly heavy, it doesn't shy away from showcasing a story that highlights the real-life toll war takes on a personal level. We may not see mountains of bodies or intense brutalization, but we do see an intimate story about one man and his family, and this adds just a little bit of extra texture to the game world. There's a somewhat similar scene between the dwarf and Krobus that further raises questions about geopolitics and war. A shadow person above ground? This is outrageous. Your people were responsible for the death of my entire family. If you dwarves hadn't driven us from our ancestral home, we'd never have had to resort to violence. I'm sorry about your family. Sorry isn't going to cut it.
Silence, both of you! The elemental wars have long been finished. You have no reason to be fighting any longer. The two of you must make peace for the sake of the humans that live around you. Surely you can see that. Very well. I'll stay away from the sewer from now on. And I'm truly sorry about the past, Dwarf. I have no personal gripe with you. Very good. I shall cast the Seal of Promise to finalize this agreement.
I love the extra bit of lore this adds to the world, and it raises more questions. If the dwarves and shadow people are at war, or had been in the past, this implies there are enough sentient versions of these creatures to build nations and have complex geopolitics themselves. It also raises questions as to why the shadow people and dwarves are relegated to the mines and caves. Have they ever engaged with human governments for peace? Why are they marginalized? And what causes shadow people to become sentient like Krobus? This becomes even more suspect in the face of the game's themes about connecting to your community. It's such a small scene, but stokes so much imagination in the player. Aside of violent conflict and potentially, apartheid with how non-human sentient creatures are regarded, there are also other, lighter things like new locations visited in cutscenes such as Zuzu City, which add another layer of feeling like the valley is a small part of a larger world, which helps create this iconic immersive experience. There's so much culture in the valley, from all of the book titles in the library introducing new concepts to the fact there's a full-blown religion across multiple cultures all worshipping the creator Yoba, whom Pierre has a shrine to in his house where people come for worship. It's all communicated subtly, an interesting item here, a unique line of dialogue there, but it culminates in a world that truly feels alive and always has something new to learn about. So that's the end of the narrative and themes section. Stardew sets its tone through strong characterization, the simple mechanics of making friends, and the broader world these characters inhabit. Everywhere you look, there are stories of people coming together with their community as a means to pursue what they love. Whether it be leaving Jojamar to become a farmer, getting the confidence needed to embrace adventuring, finding a productive outlet for your creativity you can share with your goddaughter, or just, being a little fucking freak like Clint. This world is about being the person you want to be, and with the backdrop and tone of the world understood, I now want to explore how Stardew Valley guides you through the actual gameplay mechanics, and how it encourages the idea of embracing your authentic interests and the freedom over the gameplay it grants the player. Stardew is a slow burn of a game that starts off on a very small scale, but it drip feeds mechanics in such a way that it gives you time to engage with them and get comfortable utilizing them before giving you something new to engage with, so you can then see how the new mechanic interacts with previously established ones, creating a snowballing effect of interlocking systems and approaches to the game that help inform the player about different playstyles and allows them to explore which mechanics they jive with best. This leads to an experience where the player is never overwhelmed by their options, while simultaneously stimulating curiosity over what the next mechanic might be and how it compounds with other in-game mechanics. And the mechanics are communicated in a very natural way to the player, allowing them to engage with them freely on their own time rather than being railroaded to each on a set path. Something I appreciate about the progression is how natural it is, and how the mechanics play off of each other so mindfully. I think a great example of learning mechanics through gameplay is the energy and money balance that the player faces early in the game. Stardew establishes these two bottlenecks to progress early on, which guides the player to find new mechanics to overcome these limitations on their own, without needing a lot explicitly told to them. The first day is very simple. You're given 15 parsnips to plant, which teaches the player about farming and energy management. By introducing crops first, the game immediately communicates farming as the cornerstone of how you make your money, or at least it is expected for a first-time or early-on player. Plus, with your name being farmer and shit, it's pretty obvious this is a big part of it all. At the beginning, you only have so much money to spend on new crops, but more importantly, to the early game, you start with very little energy and few means to regain it once used. Because of this, the player is naturally guided towards finding their own solutions and has to evaluate what tasks are most important to achieve each day with the limited resources they have. Limitations also inspire imagination. At the beginning, you can only start a very small farm, but the mechanics are so simple, it's easy to start planning out where to expand your crop areas and begin wondering what other buildings or farming accessories you'll unlock later. After running out of energy, there really isn't too much to do on day one, but explore the town to become familiar with the area and other villagers. Outside of energy, money is the other big bottleneck, and while naturally exploring, the player will discover there are forgeable items around the town which supply a little bit of energy to help with that bottleneck, and they can be sold for a small amount of gold to be invested in new crops. By placing these limitations, the game ensures players will be looking for solutions on day one, and the game is also aware on day one you will want to be exploring, so the solution to the money/energy problem is mindfully caked into the one other activity you will be motivated to do. This also keeps the map active. When you have nothing else going on, it's worthwhile to explore the map again for new forageables, and because you are traversing the same areas over and over again, it helps keep that repetition engaging, at least until forageables get phased out by other energy or money-making means. The game starts off slow, from having nothing to do on day one but meet people and rifle through their garbage, but as you get fed new mechanics, it snowballs into this gigantic web of interconnected systems that all appear naturally to the player. On the second day, Willie invites you over to take his rod, which once again adds another solution to money and energy through fishing. After a week or so, the mines open up, which provides access to metal for upgrading gear and precious gemstones for money. All of this is still choked by energy. It makes the most fiscal sense to invest as much money as you can into crops, as they are a guaranteed return on investment, but if you have too many crops planted too early on, then you won't have the energy required to water the whole field. Or you can water the whole field but are left with no energy to do anything else and become stagnant until you're ready to cash out on your crops. It's important to mine early on to get the tool upgrades, which allow you to use them in a more energy efficient manner, but you also need money to upgrade the tools, which largely comes from your farm. The early game is an engaging balancing act of calculating how much energy you need to explore the mines and how many crops you need to have planted to get the money for upgrades and everything else you need. All of these interlocking systems naturally guide the player towards a game loop of watering your crops, using your leftover energy in the mines for new materials, using those materials to upgrade your tools, to have more energy, to delve deeper into the mines, to get better tools, to use energy more efficiently, to get a larger farm, to make more money, to buy better tools, to get deeper in the mines, etc. There are also 6 distinct skills the player levels up as they use them, and each new level unlocks craftables related to that skill, which can help with energy usage and opens up new mechanics for the player to explore. While all of these are helpful in dealing with energy, the big solution to the problem is finding the first star drop, likely being the one in the mines. And with this being such an important upgrade found in a unique manner, it prods the player's imagination, wondering how they can get more star drops. Then there are also sprinklers, which automatically water your crops for you every day, so you never have to invest energy into maintaining the farm. These are hugely beneficial. If you're trying to make a lot of money, this is your bread and butter strategy. Of course, first-time players might not know about sprinklers or don't quite see the potential, so Stardew mindfully makes winter a season where it is basically impossible to do any traditional farming. While this certainly hurts profit margins, it gives the early player who might be struggling with energy management a whole season where they don't have to worry about farming. Instead, they can just catch up on mining and tool upgrades, setting them up well to really pop off in the next year.
Most of what I've discussed thus far is the natural guidance the mechanics have by nature. There's no quest to forge your first item and sell it or eat it, it's just obvious by design that's what you're meant to do, which is an unintrusive way for the game to communicate its mechanics. But there is some direct intervention from the game to guide players, but it always does so in a narratively justifiable way. For the effect Stardew is trying to achieve, it has the perfect level of guidance for the player and how it introduces information directly to them. The player receives letters at the mailbox most every day, a lot of which contains information the player needs when it becomes irrelevant, and all of the advice is given directly from other villagers or individuals in the game world, as opposed to a dehumanized UI box. For example, the game wants you to know that when the seasons change, your crops will die, so don't invest everything in pumpkins on fall 18 like I did, wasting a few thousand gold like an idiot. Instead of having a pop-up on your screen tutorializing you on the mechanic, they have Granny Evelyn send you a notice because she has been characterized as a gardener and a very kind woman through the in-game interactions with her. This gives you relevant information that would have been painful to have learned by mistake, but doesn't intrude on your gameplay experience. Rather, it enhances it by seeing how sweet Evelyn is. This is a trick the game pulls a few times. You can watch TV in the game, and one of the channels, Living Off the Land, is specifically dedicated to provide tips for new players through a cute TV show run by some rugged old dude who looks like he's been homesteading for years and wants to dole out some of that, good fucking farm wisdom. There's also a quest log the player has, which is certainly more directly in line with the depersonalized UI, but the quests are given to the player through other characters, like Robin mentioning she could build you a coop, or Lewis gifting you parsnips, so it makes sense to grow them. For the tutorial quests, the game is careful to give you a simple enough task to learn the mechanic, but it leaves space for the player to go that step further and utilize the mechanic on a deeper level to match their playstyle. Maybe you want to mass industrialize tons of animals for large profit margins, or if the player doesn't engage with the mechanic at all, that's fine too. Or maybe they just want a few chickens and cows to liven up their farm. The game allows you the freedom to just keep it at a coop in a barn and be done with it. It sets up natural guidance for a player to then pursue any one of its mechanics to whatever extent they please.
Something else I want to mention about introducing mechanics in games in general is that players can get very easily overwhelmed when there's too much to do or see all at once. If you throw too much at the player, they won't know what mechanics are most important to least important, and they won't have time to absorb a mechanic to see how it's related to others they have learned. The further benefit of having mechanics only hinted at initially is it stokes curiosity. After the boulder blocking the mines is cleared, the player will likely head straight there because the implementation of the mines was restrained. It builds that intrinsic motivation to make it feel like a genuine discovery. It also raises the question of what other areas or discoveries are left to find. After the first few days of settling into the mine, expand, farm game loop, the player might feel like they have seen what the game has to offer and where it's going, but that's really only half of the game. It sets the basic tools you need to expand and invest in new buildings/mechanics to engage with, but without a clear goal, a lot of players might not have enough motivation to engage with a lot of the mechanics, and they may fall to the wayside, because they aren't as profitable as simply investing in more sprinklers and starfruit, or players have already fallen into their own routine of gameplay and don't feel a need to invest into learning a new mechanic like animals or beekeeping. So the game introduces the community center to incentivize players towards at least learning the basics of every mechanic. The community center is sort of like the main quest of Stardew Valley, requiring the player to engage with practically every in-game mechanic to finish it. It's designed as a giant scavenger hunt, requiring 60 different items of varying categories, but instead of showing you the 60 items you need as soon as you unlock it, the game once again shows restraint and starts off very small, gradually increasing in scope and difficulty of acquisition. It's first introduced by Lewis, waxing poetic about the days when it was up and running and people would gather there together. Now it's all run down and there's no money to fix it, and Jojo Mart wants to turn it into a warehouse, the antithesis of communal gathering. The ultimate goal of the community center is to fix it so the community can become closer and stronger, once again tying that central theme into the gameplay. The way it works is each room has a set number of bundles, which require specific items to complete, and each is themed around the room it's in. While a player could ignore the community center outright if they really wanted to, the game gives strong incentives to complete it outside of narrative reasoning by having the reward for completing each room unlock new mechanics or areas to explore. If you want to see Calico Desert or unlock the minecart system, you need to complete the community center. Well, in true Stardew fashion, there is another way to unlock the community center stuff, but I'll talk about that later. The center starts off with the crafts room, which has the foraging bundles. These bundles are categorized by the 4 seasons, and players need to get the 4 unique forageables of each season to finish the corresponding bundle. Because of the money/energy bottlenecks placed at the beginning, players have already experienced foraging, and might even have a few of the spring forageables saved in their chest. As to the contents of the other seasonal bundles, the players can likely intuit that when it changes to summer, the forageables that are in that bundle will replace the spring ones around the map, teasing how the mechanic of changing seasons works. But what is not as easily intuited are the items required for the exotic foraging bundle. With items like morels, cave carrots, cactus fruit, and oak resin, these are forageables and artisan goods not easily findable on the ground just anywhere in Stardew Valley, but require new mechanics like tree taps, or you need to unlock new areas such as the Bust of Calico Desert. Of course, a first-time player doesn't necessarily know that, so the curiosity is prodded once again to find the solutions to these mysteries. After a bundle is finished, it will unlock at least one new room, starting with the pantry and the fish tank, which unlock after one foraging bundle is complete. The pantry follows a similar pattern to the foraging bundle, where it has a bundle for each season's unique crops, which the player likely has all the spring crops available, but it also includes the animal, artisan, and quality crops bundles. The animal bundle unsurprisingly contains products from animals, which guides players towards building coops and barns on their farm, engaging with a new mechanic. Or if they have already built a coop and a barn because of the intro quest they're given by the game, or they pick the new farm that starts with the coop, it takes them to that next step of needing a variety of animals, requiring you to upgrade the coop. The Artisan bundle furthers this by requiring a lot of processed animal goods and other goods like honey, jelly, and unique fruits. This incentivizes the player to engage with processing mechanics, which make all animal goods more profitable, as well as engage with beehives, which can create different types of honey based on the flowers around them, and fruit trees to plant on the farm, which can be processed into jam in a preserves jar. The Quality Crops bundle incentivizes players to utilize fertilizer, which can guide them towards exploring with other items like quick grow and retaining soil and shit like that. All of these serve kind of like a tutorial in a sense, but rather than explicitly laying out a quest involving how to build a barn with Robin, and then buy the cows in a bucket at Marnie's, and level up farming enough to make a cheese press, and then harvest milk from the cows with the bucket, and process it in the cheese press, it gives strong incentive for the players to make cheese, leading to them searching out the mechanic for themselves. And after having the basics, it becomes apparent to the player how the mechanic can suit their playstyle. This trend continues across all of the rooms. The fish tank encourages fishing in unique areas, learning how fish spawns are affected by season, time of day, location, and weather, and it requires usage of lobster pots, another potential passive moneymaker if you can, be fucking bothered with them. Clearly this was a mechanic introduced that I quickly dropped. The boiler room is based entirely around the mines, with items requiring mining and combat to complete, and the bulletin board has the largest variety of items requiring foraging, artisan goods, cooking, fishing, animal husbandry, farming. Practically every mechanic is required in at least one item on the bulletin board. The odd one out is the vault. Every vault bundle requires a certain amount of gold, the lowest being 2,500 with the highest being 25,000. This serves an important purpose of ensuring the player is engaging consistently with at least a few of the mechanics to get the needed gold, and it gives them an idea of how much money they need to really achieve their goals and where they are expected to be at by the time they fix the bus to Calico Desert and go to the Skull Cavern mines. When the community center is finally complete, there's a cute cutscene showing everyone coming together, and the underlying plot of Joja trying to take over the valley comes to a head. It's once again a nod to the theme of communities being stronger when they come together, with the locals fighting back against the depersonalized Joja Corp. Oh, and finally, Pierre's shop will be open on Wednesdays. That might not really sound like much of a reward, but I can't tell you how many times I've tried to sell him my goods only to realize it's a fucking Wednesday. What's nice about the community center is the fact that because the bundles don't require much more than just engaging with the base mechanics to complete them, it leaves it up to you to decide which to engage with more. You don't need to have animals and bees and crops and gem duplicators and a slime hutch or fishing every day or foraging every day to complete the community center or get enough money. You just need to do most of those things at least once. And this leads to a lot of player expression and creativity. Want to do a challenge run where you can only make money by selling cooked meals like a chef instead of raw fruits and vegetables like a farmer? Go for it. Have you yearned for the mine since you were a child? Fuck it, just do some Skull Cavern deep layer runs for tons of raw iridium to sell and never water crops. Want to be miserable and make very little money? Just build a million slime hutches for your primary income. The game encourages exploration and playstyles after the general game mechanics are established. Thus far, I feel like I've described a lot of the game, particularly the early parts, as needing to be completed in the most efficient manner possible. Rushing for a star drop and sprinklers to quickly bank as much gold as you can in year one, being incredibly cautious with your limited early energy, and while that is a lot of what I want to discuss in the progression section of this video, how the game naturally guides the player to push the established mechanics to the extreme, it's important to note that the player is never forced to engage with any mechanic through penalization, rather they are incentivized into the systems by their construction. I talked a lot in the previous section about strategizing how to best use your limited energy early on as if there was some big issue, but really there's no penalty for taking your time. You could water a small patch of crops and have tons of energy left over to fish and dick around, or just wait around all day to buy Leah a salad because you have a crush on her. There are a lot of jokes and discussions about archetypes of Stardew players. There's the min-maxer who needs to have the most efficient, profitable farm and get the community center done on year one, which is obviously me. There's the designer who needs to have a gorgeous farm and interior to all their buildings laid out, regardless of how profitable it all is. And then there's that one asshole who just wants to hop on and fish for a little while. Or you just bounce around and engage with whatever mechanics you're feeling like that day. With so many possible ways to play the game, it's important to introduce the mechanics properly to allow any playstyle to emerge naturally. And it's difficult to have a game that some treat more like Animal Crossing, others treat it more like Factorio, and both players can still really enjoy themselves. This ties in really well once again with the main themes of the game. All over the narrative is characters connecting and learning what their true interests are, and it's the same for the farmer. Each Stardew player will gravitate to different aspects and mechanics, and the community center is here to show you what all your options are without forcing you to invest every bit of gold and time on a mechanic you don't enjoy much, like me with the crab pots. Rather, you can invest your gold and time in the ones that you are truly interested in. And here's another little secret for you. What if you want to go to Calico Desert, but you don't want to faff about with forageables and animal goods and fishing to even unlock the vault? What if your true interests are contradictory to the message of communities coming together? Well, you can be a sellout and go the Joja Mart route. If you pop over there, instead of having to engage with all the mechanics and work with the Junimos and revitalize local businesses and the economy and all, have fun, you can just pay Joja Mart loads of gold to unlock all the community center incentives and fuck over Pierre. I mean, he seems to be the least popular character amongst the fans anyways. While I've never personally gone this route, I appreciate that the option is here. Not every player finds it engaging to learn all the mechanics, especially if they know they're never going to use them again. They'd rather just min-max their farm and lean into that aspect of the game, and that's okay. It also works really well for people replaying the game. They know how tedious it is to catch every fish for the fish tank. If you miss one, you'll have to wait a whole endgame year to get another chance at getting it, because the piece of shit fucking walleye only comes in the fall, I forgot to catch it on a rainy day, or what always happens is, I forget to plant an apple tree in time, you need those fucking apples for the fodder bundle, and then you sit around waiting like a jackass, and then the day your tree finally matures, you find the last apple you need from the fruit bat cave anyways, so the tree was pointless, and it all feels like shit. The point being that the Joja Mart route adds that little bit of extra player autonomy, which is always welcome in a game about playing how you want to play. Now, back in the day, that was pretty much the end game. From there, you have all the gold and knowledge to really lean deeply into your farm and make it exactly how you want. But as for extrinsic motivation, there wasn't too much left pushing the player to continue on. Of Of course, even without extrinsic motivation, there's still a lot left to do in the game. Like I said, the community center is there to teach you the basic mechanics of the game, so now that it's done, you're really ready to take that next step of making your farm your own and lean into the type of farm you enjoy. Usually, I will have about half of my farm dedicated to crops, the other half dedicated to a few coops with rabbits and one barn full of pigs, and the rest of the space is reserved for kegs to make wine, and every inch of my cellar is covered with aging casks to maximize my profits. But there are loads of different ways to lay out your farm to your own liking. There's a lot of videos showcasing late game Stardew farms, all laid out really beautifully and much cooler than anything I've ever made, so I'll put a few of those videos down in the description for y'all to check out. And outside of making your dream farm, there are a few other activities to complete as well. There's the museum, where you have to collect artifacts and gemstones throughout the game, but this pretty much gets completed in tandem with the community center. And there were definitely other stretch goals, like getting all the pillars, which cost multi-millions of gold, and the golden clock, which costs around 10 million gold. And of course, there's still all the amazing villagers to befriend, but for a while, you're pretty much at the end of the game, with all the mechanics and tools unlocked by the time you've completed the community center. That is until the Ginger Island update came out, adding a whole new area to explore with loads of puzzles, secrets, quests, a new mine system, and an entire second farm. So this seems like a good spot to talk about the amount of love Eric Baroni still shows Stardew Valley. Years after the initial release, he's still consistently making new updates to the game entirely for free. The most major one was Ginger Island with the 1.4 update, which I will discuss after this, but the updates before that all consistently added new items, dialogue, quests, buildings, interactions. It's pretty impressive how different of a game this is from the initial release. For this video, I have been playing through the 1.6 update for the first time, and I heard how there was a new farm layout and skill books, and I thought that was pretty much it. But there are loads of new items, Easter eggs, festivals, just a ton of content that continues to surprise me after realistically well over 100 hours of cumulative playtime. I know this isn't some revolutionary new take or anything. Stardew Valley fans have always praised Concerned Ape for his dedication to this game, and the player base, and frankly the respect he shows for those of us who have lived in his little world and love it deeply, but it would be disrespectful in a video talking about why Stardew Valley is great to not mention how one of the best parts is knowing you're supporting an independent developer who respects your time and appreciates the love you show his game. Absolutely should have won Labor of Love for the 2024 Steam Awards. Or Baldur's Gate 3 should have won, not Shadow of the Erdtree. I love Elden Ring and the DLC, but a paid DLC versus the free updates Larian and Concerned Ape have been putting out consistently are the true Labor of Love. Sorry, that's a little off track. Back to Ginger Island and the late game progression. Ginger Island is basically a DLC-sized post-game filled with a ton of new mechanics to help really conquer the rest of the game and activities that are difficult enough to challenge a player who already has millions of gold and years worth of resources at their disposal. It can be accessed after you have completed the community center, regardless if it was through the Junimos or through Joja Mart. Willie will ask you to come fix his boat, which requires 5 iridium bars, 5 battery packs, and 200 hardwood, all of which requires you to be pretty far into the game to have acquired. When you first arrive, you have a small area to explore and a new NPC to meet, but to progress further, you need to start collecting golden walnuts, which is the main form of progression on the island. Also, a little side note, I'm realizing as I write this, whenever I play Elden Ring, I always call the golden seeds golden walnuts, and I didn't know why until this very second, but it makes me laugh every time I mess it up. Golden walnuts are a very different form of progression than the community center is. Instead of giving you a list of specific items you need to collect and needing to engage with each unique mechanic to collect those items, you instead need to collect a lot of a single item in various ways, which can then be spent to unlock new areas and mechanics on the island. There are a lot of ways to collect golden walnuts, from puzzles to mini-quests to fishing to cracking open golden coconuts to finding fossils to combat and just general exploration. There's even one from a dart minigame you play at a secret pirate bar. You can use walnuts to unlock a whole second farm that can grow any crop from any season, even during winter, a new mine, a little area where you need to collect fossils similar to the museum in the main game, and a few other less notable places. By this point, the player likely has a ton of money already and has completed most of the content on the mainland, so having this little DLC kind of area with its own unique progression helps build that feeling of starting over. I remember the first time I completed the community center, before Ginger Island existed, I felt like I was kind of done with the game. I mean, I was definitely wrong. I came back a few months later and made a massive farm, accumulated millions of gold, got the return scepter, but then by that point, it felt like there wasn't much else left to do. But by adding Ginger Island, where it has a system of progression unique to the island that I couldn't just abuse my millions of gold to buy my way to the new content, it was really refreshing and brought me back to that beginner feeling where the world has so many secrets for me to find. This system has different advantages than the community center does. While the community center is meant to be more of a guide to new mechanics by requiring specific items from those mechanics, Ginger Island is more of a sandbox by having the rewards always be golden walnuts. Maybe you're really frustrated with the mermaid puzzle, like my friend who does the thumbnails for my videos is, and just can't figure it out. But that's okay, because you can find the walnuts you need in other places and just skip it. It's kind of like stars and moons in most 3D Mario games. You don't need every one of them, just a lot of them. Except Mario Sunshine, where you need the 7th shine in every world. That was a misstep. Although Mario Sunshine is my favorite 3D Mario game of all time. If you haven't already, check out Mario Eclipse. It's this awesome fan game. It's really cool. Sorry, a little off track there though. So something I haven't discussed too much here in this section, but will in the final section, is the amount of secrets and extras Stardew Valley places in the game. There are tons of hidden mechanics, areas, Easter eggs, and fun tidbits, which makes Stardew such a fun game to explore, and this gets ramped up on Ginger Island. Because the game has set the precedent of placing secrets all over the map and rewarding players who are paying attention to the land, this has trained the player to be searching for secrets in this new area, and Ginger Island is packed full of them. Even just seeing a little dirt patch that seems to be completely surrounded now piques my curiosity, and it's rewarded with a hidden walnut. They also tease you by showing walnuts in seemingly inaccessible areas, but then the player might remember in the secret forest there was a hidden path to find the extra hardwood stumps, so they'll begin searching for the hidden paths to the walnuts. Because there was so much effort put into designing the main game to be filled with secrets, Eric Baroni could further cash in on that established mindset with a map filled to the brim with even more difficult secrets. I've already discussed a few new mechanics Ginger Island introduces that are unlocked with golden walnuts, but there are a lot of others specifically designed to give endgame players endgame rewards. I mentioned the new farm and the new mine, but when you get to the end of the new volcano mines, you get access to the forge, where you can combine rings together and use prismatic shards to enchant your tools to give huge endgame buffs, like having the watering can never go empty, or having the fishing rod automatically reel in when it senses a fish. This gives a really nice purpose to prismatic shards as well. There are a fair number of uses for them prior to this, like getting the Galaxy Sword and using it in the Jonesra bundle, but after a while you start to bank them up, and it's cool to have an extra useful purpose for such a rare item. This is the part of the game where they really let the player get that extra bit more powerful in the very late game, which is always super fun, and I appreciate these additions. It feels like a reward for the people that have spent the hours in this world and love it deeply. To gain access to the really endgame stuff though, the player will need to unlock Mr. Chee's secret walnut room, which is one of the final challenges in the game. While most unlocks on Ginger Island require around 10 to 20 walnuts at most, Mr. Chee's secret room requires you to have collected a cumulative 100 walnuts throughout your time on Ginger Island, out of a total 130. I think my first time through, I found about 70 walnuts or so on my own until I gave up and started googling some of the puzzle solutions, but it was just so tantalizing. This is where the careful planning of the game's progression really pays off well. 100 walnuts is not an easy task at all. It can be quite tedious at times, but the game has set a precedent of consistently rewarding the player for completing the in-game tasks with major unlocks that never once felt like they were a waste of time to do. The minecarts, the greenhouse, the bus to Calico Desert, the boat to Ginger Island, every single one of these was well worth the effort it took to unlock them, so I knew that whatever was behind that door had to be worth it, and it absolutely is. Inside the Walnut Room is Mr. Chi himself, and he has a list of new challenging quests for you to do that add new mechanics, a new shop, and the final challenge of the game. There are a lot of different quests available at the Chi board, but some of them add even more unique mechanics or remix old mechanics. The one that comes immediately to mind is the Dangers in the Deep quest. This overhauls the original mines, adding new difficult enemies and radioactive ore, which can be used in a few crafting recipes, and the player has to make it all the way to the bottom of the mines again. There's a corresponding quest for the Skull Cavern mines as well, which adds that extra challenge late game players are looking for, or one that adds a new crop called Chi Berries or some shit like that, and it can be found randomly throughout the map, and you have 28 days to harvest and sell 500 of them, or the hardest challenge, getting 50,000 points on Endless Junimo Cart. That one is actually like crazy fucking difficult, good luck. The reward for completing these quests is a new currency called Chi Gems. In the Walnut Room, there's a new shop where you can exchange Chi Gems for amazing items like Galaxy Shards, which can be used to further upgrade your weapons, or a new upgrade to Iridium Sprinklers, expanding their tile reach by 1 in every direction. It's nice to have items like this, which are direct upgrades to existing systems, but there are a few special items that feel like really unique rewards. The Town Key is the one that comes to mind immediately. This allows you to enter any room in the game at any time, regardless of friendship level. It's a really interesting item. Like, it doesn't have much real effect on gameplay outside of it being easier to give gifts to NPCs, and it's sorta immersion breaking, like Pierre wouldn't be all chill with me looming over him at 1 AM in bed, but it's a sort of admin-like power you'd expect to be in a cheat code or something like that. But considering how difficult it is to get, it feels justified. You're at the end of the game, you've seen it all, you deserve that power. Well, you technically haven't seen it all just yet. Mr. Chi's room also has a little board on the side tracking how close you are to reaching perfection, which takes the idea of done it all to its literal conclusion. This is the final challenge of Stardew Valley. To achieve perfection, the player will need to complete all these tasks. You need to ship one of every item in the game, you need to build the earth, water, desert, and island obelisk, which each require multi-millions of gold. You need to build the golden clock on the farm, which costs 10 million gold. You need to complete all monster eradication goals for the Adventurers Guild. You need to reach maximum hearts with every single villager. You need to reach level 10 in every skill. You need to find every star drop, which includes completing the museum. You need to cook every single recipe at least once. You need to craft every single item in the game. You need to catch every fish in the game, and you need to find all 130 golden walnuts on Ginger Island. So yeah, this challenge is kinda absolutely balls to the wall bonanza levels of difficult, and that's a technical term, by the way. Remember how I said you have all the freedom you want in approaching the game? For perfection, you don't. I was reading some forums about what parts of perfection were the hardest for people, and generally there were a lot of varying answers based on what mechanics people just didn't jive with during their playthrough. A lot of people said getting the golden clock is the hardest because it's 10 million gold, but I always thought of that as one of the easier parts because I focus on profitability with wine and casks and Ginger Island being covered in ancient fruit, so it just seems inevitable I will eventually reach that amount of money. But a lot of people don't play Stardew like it's a stressful factory sim game, so 10 million is a high bar to shoot for, so they better start fucking treating it like a factory sim. Others claimed the golden clock was pretty easy, but struggled getting max hearts with everyone. Even with love gifts aplenty, if you don't make socializing a priority throughout your entire playthrough, it will inevitably take a long time if you try to shove it all in at the end. Cooking was another one that came up, which I definitely understand. I never really engaged much with the mechanic myself because it requires a lot of specific items from across multiple seasons, so it makes sense why this one's difficult. Although I think the most common answer I saw was crafting one of every item. I've never even attempted to do this, so I really don't know which items are hardest to get, but I can imagine finding every recipe and all the specific resources takes a long time. Of course you don't have to get perfection, I'm a poser and didn't do it for this video, and I likely never will do it, but it's nice to have one final crazy challenge for the farmer who has seemingly conquered the valley, and you get a unique final cutscene with your spouse on the summit, which means if you really want to see it all, you have to get perfection across 12 different playthroughs to get every spousal special scene, so, good luck with that. The other reward you get for 100% perfection is the Statue of True Perfection, which gives you a prismatic shard every day. That's a pretty impressive final reward, though I imagine if you have put in the hours for perfection, you likely have a lot of prismatic shards already, and there's now zero extrinsic motivation to continue, and you've seen all the character cutscenes and such, so you likely won't get much practical use out of it, but of course that's not really the point. The point is, it's the ultimate testament that you're a for real Stardew player, and you can flex on everyone else that you love the game so deeply and you have the proof that you've done everything. So that's most of the progression of Stardew. From balancing energy and hunger levels to get off the ground, guiding you towards early mechanics, to learning more complex core mechanics from the community center, to digging deeper into the mechanics of your choosing, carving out your own unique playstyle, all the way to Ginger Island, where the final challenges await you and push you to engage deeply with every mechanic. This game is a conscious growing web of systems that consistently engage the player with new approaches, mechanics, and excitement at what's around the corner. Giving the player the freedom to do what they wish with their farm and time in the valley connects directly back into the narrative themes. The farmer is there to disconnect from their old life of stress and embrace their own authentic interests through their connection to the community and the valley at large. And that's what the player is trying to do as well. The dedication to freedom and approach is so difficult to get correct. It can lead to an unorganized mess of systems that becomes unapproachable to casual gamers and boring to experienced ones, but Stardew's natural guidance through its restrained implementation of mechanics and incentives to explore leads to an experience so many different people will all deeply love. It's fun playing online with friends and seeing this in action. While I'm managing our money, buying potatoes, planning out how to get as many sprinklers as early as possible, my other friend will spend their time designing our farm to make it appealing and checking hat mouse to get the latest drip, while another is running around talking to all the villagers. Another is just fucking fishing all day. I don't know why I keep returning to the fishing player with such harsh language. I'm noticing it during editing. To all my fishing fans out there, you're valid. Have fun getting all the legendary fish, my friend. I know it may seem like some of what I discussed was fairly obvious, but Stardew is so mindful of seemingly obvious mechanics in such a way it compounds into a nuanced experience, guiding players towards their own fun. With the narrative theme set as the backdrop and the practical understanding of game mechanics understood, the final part of Stardew I want to discuss is how the game world promotes exploration and further explore how the game creates the impression it's a living, breathing world filled with mysteries the player will never fully understand but will be left in wonder at. What really got me wanting to make this video in the first place is how mysterious Stardew Valley is, especially on a first playthrough, and so much of this mystery is due to how it encourages exploration and a drive to figure out the big questions the map naturally presents. This is an aspect of the game I've certainly touched on, but I want to talk a little further in depth about how well thought out exploration is in this game and how densely packed the world is with details. This section will be a little shorter and less structured than the previous two, mostly just going over a few of my favorite moments and secrets in the game, but when taken in their totality, it guides players towards an inquisitive mindset which actively makes the world feel more alive and rewarding to be a part of. Let's go back to day 1 for a moment. You've planted all your crops, chopped down a few trees, and are left with nothing to do but walk around, meet some villagers, and explore the map. From the very beginning, the game teases a lot of locations and mysteries that inspire intrinsic motivation to get the resources needed to explore these mysteries and just get further in the game in general. Let's run through all of the areas that are teased on the first day that you might stumble upon. There's the dilapidated community center, the mines blocked off by the big boulder, the path to the train station / sauna blocked by a different boulder, there's the locked wizard's tower, the log blocking the entrance to the secret woods, the dilapidated shack Hatmouse works out of, both locked entrances to the sewer, the bus that is out of order, as well as the tunnel next to the bus with the broken down fuse box or whatever it is, the second arcade game that requires a skull-shaped key, the other half of the beach that requires 300 wood to fix the bridge to, the mysterious empty-seeming bridge south of the wizard tower that is part of the flower dance festival, the broken down greenhouse on the farm, as well as the empty cave on the farm, the mysterious statues that are dotted around the map where you teleport to if you use a totem, the broken down minecarts around the map, Grandpa's shrine on the farm, and I'm sure there's at least a few more that I missed on this list. Every single one of these has a payoff. I never had to look up how to fix or unlock or interact with any of them. They all emerge naturally from the progression of the game. Granted, they mostly came from the community center or will unlock on a set date, but there are loads of other secrets that stand out on their own completely. I remember when I reached the bottom of the mines and got the skull-shaped key thinking, I know exactly what this is for, and running over to the saloon to get my fucking ass kicked at Junimo Kart, then being surprised when the quest to discover the purpose of the skull-shaped key wasn't completed, implying a secondary use of the key, which I figured out after I unlocked the bus to Calico Desert. There's so much excitement in exploring and learning about these areas. It feels like you've solved some clever puzzle all on your own, but really the player is naturally guided towards most all of them through the progression or hints that are found in the game world, and the mysteries just continue compounding. After getting a good enough axe to open up the secret forest to finally explore that mystery, there's the statue of Old Master Cannoli looking for the sweetest taste back there. What's that all about? Or in Calico Desert, in the back of Sandy's shop, there's a bouncer there guarding a hidden upstairs room. Or once the mines are unlocked, what's behind the rock to the right? Or in the sewers, how do I get past the one door near my friend Krobus? The game trickle feeds you these tantalizing questions, and it's usually difficult to guess what the reward might be. Like fixing the bus is obviously going to take you somewhere new, and the greenhouse will obviously give you a more farming space, but who knew there was a secret casino, or that the rare seeds created sweet gem berry, which is known to be one of the sweetest tastes in all the land, which Master Cannoli may have an interest in. While in the midst of the game, it feels like its scope is never ending. Many of these discoveries take a long time to unlock or to even acquire the resources to really engage with, and it comes back to the design of placing restraint on the player and trickle feeding them the engagement. Finding new areas and mechanics is only really half of the exploration in this game though. The other half is the little Easter eggs and details that are placed everywhere. I've been playing Stardew since 2018 or so, and I've watched a lot of videos about it, but even still, when I looked over the Stardew Valley wiki page on Easter eggs, I learned about a ton more that I was unaware of, and noticed a few that were missing from the page as well. Here I'll run through just a few of my favorites and some I learned during this video. Before the game even begins, on the title screen, Eric Baroni hides a bunch of fun little Easter eggs the player can discover. If you click on the foliage enough, Junimos take over the screen, or you can fill in the R with a smiley face, and if you click on the E enough, an alien will open it up like a door. Even before you realize it, Stardew has already set up tons of details and secrets for the player to discover. I love Marnie and Lewis's not-so-secret relationship, and there are a lot of little details you can find out about it. Early on, you get the quest to find Lewis's purple boxers or whatever, and you run all around town trying to find them just to learn they were in Marnie's room the whole time, and she gets real flustered if you ask her about it. Now, most players like myself will return them to Lewis, who also gets flustered when confronted about where the player found them, but there's a slew of other options you can use them for. You can showcase them in the county fair at your stall, or you can throw them in the fucking stew at the luau if you want. Also, I had no idea in the latest update you could place a staircase in Lewis's room to find a secret cellar with cursed pants that try to kill you. I mean, that's fucking crazy. I love how I'm still learning about new zones and secrets after probably a few hundred hours of gameplay, and that Concerned Ape is still adding new areas after thousands of hours of development. Also, if you rustle the bush outside Lewis's house at 12:40 a.m., both Marnie and him will jump out of it and scramble back to their homes. I love it. It's so wholesome and cute, like both of y'all are grown-ass adults with homes. I don't think anyone at Marnie's house or in town would be upset with them for being together, but they still keep it a secret. My headcanon is they both find it really exciting to sneak around like it's some big affair that needs to stay on the down low, so they romanticize it in their heads. Another cool little one I learned has to do with star drops. During character creation, you were asked what your favorite thing is, and you're not really sure why until you get a star drop and it says the flavor reminds you of weed, which is what I put as my favorite thing when I was 18. My friends watching this video know what I'm about, and now y'all do too, I suppose. What I learned during this video is if you put Stardew or a few other terms denoting the valley as your favorite thing, the star drop will instead say you feel an unwavering connection to the valley itself. Like, what a cool little detail. I also like the moments where concerned ape will break the fourth wall to poke at the player directly, chastising them for trying to cheat. There's this known exploit where if you name your character a specific item ID, every time anyone says your name in game, it will give you a copy of that item. If you go to the Shrine of Illusions later to change your name to an item ID, it will give one of a few different responses to the player, shaming them for exploiting the game. My favorite one is, Grandpa is shaking his head. I built this farm the old-fashioned way, not with unlimited whatever I decided to put in the video. I also learned there are a lot of cool ones revolving around the summit. So to access the summit, the player needs to have completed Perfection in Cheese Walnut Room, which we discussed earlier as being like nuts bonkers to achieve. But if you want to be a little rapscallion, if you want to be a little rapscallion and get there early through exploits, instead of getting the normal cutscene or just being able to hang out there, there's a special cutscene with Mr. Chi where he chastises you and then fucking murders you. It's another cute fourth wall break poking at the player. These are just a few of the secrets or Easter eggs that can be found around the map, but there are a lot of cool events that can occur overnight as well. Whenever you sleep, it shows how much money you made from the items you sold in the bin the previous day, but there are also tons of different events that can occur. Some scripted to unlock new areas at certain times, others can randomly occur at any moment. The first event I ever got in my first playthrough was the Crop Fairy. Every night there's a 1% chance a little fairy will come to your farm and make some of your crops fully grow, regardless of what stage of growth they're currently in. This is just a nice little extra moment that makes the player go, ooh, like that, ooh. I mean, it can have somewhat of a tangible effect on gameplay, but for the most part, it's just a cute little extra thing. There are a few of these, like the witch event or the owl statue as well. I think my favorite of them overall has to be the strange capsule event. At night, you might see a little UFO flying in the background of the money screen, and the next day there's a strange pulsating jar that has what seems like an alien in it. If you leave it on your farm for 3 days, it will then be cracked open and the alien is nowhere to be found. It could have been just left at this, but after this occurs, there's a 1% chance at night you might see a dark creature darting around town or waving at the bus stop. There's so many layers of work just for a simple Easter egg. This serves as a nice extra thing for players to experience, sure, but it has a larger effect of putting the player in a position to question if things are as simple as they seem, or if a little noise or box serves a secret secondary purpose. Like, on rainy days, you might hear this mysterious noise. You know, it was a good impression. I'm just gonna play it though. It adds so much ambiance. Rainy days are already devoid of music, with a kind of melancholic but comfy vibe. Just like a real rainy day, curled up in a blanket watching the world go by. But these ambient noises add an element of the unknown to everything. And for a long time, I wondered if there was some event or Easter egg that explained this noise. I mean, if the alien can be found running around town after it breaks out of its vat, why couldn't there be some secret ghost event going on that I haven't come across yet? While researching for this video, I found a forum thread of people discussing the exact noise I'm mentioning here. Some thinking it's a lake monster, others believing it's mermaids, and others, like me, thinking it's a ghost. This noise is actually the reason I started making this video in the first place. It was originally going to be 10 minutes long, talking about the mystery of the valley, and how little details like this are so intriguing because of the depth Eric Baroni puts into the secrets of this game, but it quickly spiraled into a much larger scope, clearly. All of this really proves how much Eric Baroni enjoys this little world he's created. While some of the Easter eggs are references, like being able to get the Meow from Terraria, which the game's visual style is clearly inspired from, a lot of these Easter eggs / secrets, like Lewis and Marnie's relationship, or the alien pod, serve as genuine bits of characterization and world building. There are very few games which have put so much density into their worlds that I question every little thing I see, but Stardew is such a special experience to create an impression of a world so alive I can explore its secrets forever. The last bit about Easter eggs and secrets I want to touch on is the honest-to-God puzzles and scavenger hunts all around the map, and a lot of those are discovered through the secret notes mechanic. During your first winter in Stardew Valley, you'll have a quest where a mysterious sentient shadow person will run away from you, and when you shake the bush they're hiding in, they give you a magnifying glass item, which unlocks the ability to find secret notes around the valley. There are 27 notes in total, and they hold all kinds of information. Some of them have info about certain villagers like gifts, others have mysterious hints like someone is waiting for you on floor 100 of Skull Cavern, others hint towards different Easter eggs like 12 o'clock, sharp, last day of the season, check the bush above the playground. And no, I'm not going to show you a clip of that secret, go try it for yourself. Then there are ones like Secret Note 19. It's hard to tell exactly what's going on in this picture, but clearly it's some sort of key to a puzzle, and then when you look closer, you realize it's Lewis's house, and it has a little green starting spot. If you follow the direction of the arrows until you can't walk anymore, it leads you to Lewis's secret golden statue of himself, yet another little Easter egg hidden behind a fun puzzle.
While many of these Easter eggs and secrets were in the game from the beginning, the magnifying glass was added later to give an actual in-game way to discover these without needing to watch a YouTube video, which, let's be real, most of us probably did anyways. Even with the little hint from the note, some of them are really hard to interpret, but it just yet again further adds to the mystery of the valley and fleshes out the gameplay experience. There are also a few really interesting quests in the game that are kind of secret. I mentioned earlier there was the broken fuse box in the tunnel the bus drives through, and there was a hidden note guiding you there as well. If you put a fresh battery into the fuse box, it unlocks a quest from Mr. Chi that's kind of like a big scavenger hunt. You need to put a rainbow shell in the box near the train, and then 10 beetroots in Lewis's fridge, and then finally, you need to feed the sand dragon its final meal. This clue is more like the secret notes from earlier. It leaves it fairly ambiguous, but gives enough that a clever player could figure it out. Most players could probably intuit that they need to go to Calico Desert, and while walking around, they might remember the giant animal skeleton that's there. If you interact with it, it says its maw gapes in the desert sun. Even in death, it yearns for a taste. Which is sort of confusing. Maybe you try to feed it a sunflower or a starfruit. Then you're thinking about it, mining in the skull caverns, blowing up some mummies' dead bodies, and one of them drops a solar essence, an item you have definitely gotten before but may have forgotten about. And after you feed it to the beast, it gives you one last clue, leading you right back to your farm, where you get the club card, finally giving you access to the upstairs room in Sandy's shop, which turns out to be a whole-ass casino with fun minigames and unique rewards that can only be gotten there. While there are a lot of puzzles on the mainland, it's really on Ginger Island where he starts introducing a ton more. Like I mentioned earlier, the way Stardew presents its world so full of secrets and details leads players on Ginger Island to have an inquisitive mindset, and because this precedent is already set, and it's the end of the game, he was able to take the puzzles to the next step in difficulty and obscurity, but they still feel achievable. I mentioned the mermaid puzzle my friend struggled with earlier, and I should mention I also struggle with it, not just, throw my visual designer under the bus like that. The mermaid only comes on rainy days, and there are these little stones in front of her, and next to the stones is an image of a little flute block, obviously suggesting there must be some song related to this puzzle. What you're meant to do is place note blocks above those stones and tune the block to the correct note. Each little stone represents a 1, and each big stone represents a 5, and the sum of those numbers represents how many times you're meant to interact with the note block to change it to the proper note. Then run past all 5 playing a little song. This one is certainly difficult to understand. I don't believe there is a key to the stone values anywhere, but there is a hint in the game to this being the solution. During the summer market event, you can see a mermaid show, and she sings you a song. There's also a hidden note you find from the magnifying glass item that just says Mermaid Show 15423. This is also a little confusing, until you realize the shells in front of the stage at the show each release a musical note, and if you hit them in that order, she gives you a pearl. The flute blocks you tuned for the Ginger Island mermaid turn out to be the exact same notes of the song from earlier. I will admit, I wasn't smart or dedicated enough to figure this one out for myself. I really needed a few more walnuts from Mr. Chi's room, and she gives you 5, so I googled the answer to it, but I can see how it's still feasible for a player to figure this one out on their own. And again, you can get enough golden walnuts from other places and puzzles that are simpler, like the frog statue requesting certain crops, or the gem pillars where you just have to repeat the pattern, so having a really hard puzzle like this is more justifiable under that lens, and it is the endgame. These are supposed to be difficult. With the mermaid puzzle, the frog puzzle, the glowing pillars, the gem birds, and other secrets and puzzles, Ginger Island is packed densely full of content to explore that continually excites. Overall, I appreciate how much trust Eric Baroni places in the players of his game. He knew people would be curious enough to go under the bus tunnel and find the fuse box, he knew they would be dedicated and clever enough to associate the mermaid song from earlier with the mermaid puzzle here, and none of these are central to game progression. You can put 100 hours into this game whilst never finding out about the secret casino. I mean, it would kinda suck not finding out about that cool secret, always being curious about the bouncer and upstairs area at Sandy's shop, but you can still have a wonderful time playing the game without digging that deep into it. Exploration and mystery in this game serve an important purpose in making the world feel very natural and real rather than a designed area where specific events are laid out at specific times to progress to the next mechanic. Even if some of the discoveries are railroaded and lose their charm on a repeat playthrough, Stardew does a good job presenting these moments as genuine mysteries and revelations you the player have made as opposed to have been presented to. The permeance of secrets and Easter eggs make the game world feel alive and dynamic and show the love the creator has for his game world. And I know on my initial playthrough I had so much intrigue and excitement at discovering new areas that I couldn't wait. I really loved this game. So that's all I really wanted to discuss about Stardew Valley. It presents a world brimming with secrets and details, guided by quality game design to find your own unique style of playing, all while neatly threaded by a message of authenticity and appreciation of community.
When I first heard about Stardew Valley, I wasn't very interested. I had played Animal Crossing and a few other cozy games before, but I always bounced off of them because the depth in the gameplay mainly came from design rather than utility and need. And I assumed Stardew would be another design sim game with cutesy characters. Not to say those are bad things in a game, it's just something I don't personally engage with much. But when I finally gave the game a shot, I instantly fell in love with the balance of mechanics and playstyles, interesting characters filled with charm and flaws, and the world that felt never ending. I imagine most of you have played this game already to be interested in a, hour and a half long video about it, but if you haven't played it yet, go ahead and start, or get to replaying, especially if you haven't played the 1.6 update. I promise you'll find a few new surprises that will bring back that nostalgic feeling of discovering something cool in Stardew Valley for the first time. There are a lot of mechanics and secrets and stories I didn't get to cover here in this video, and like I said, even after triple-digit hours of gameplay, I'm still learning new things about this game. Oh, and thanks for making it through this video. I hope to see you all again in my next project.